have your own pottery business?
No, I didn't always know that. When I was your age, I wanted to be an astronaut. And when I was in high school, I thought I would be an actress on the stage. I actually went to a school for the arts for theater. But I always knew I wanted to work with clay. Ever since I was little, I knew that it worked well in my hands. My mom used to buy us clay when we were kids and bring it home, and we never fired it, but we played with it. So I didn't always know, but at some point, it was right. Yeah. Oh gosh, I was kind of hammy. I always liked, performing and being on stage. I did dance and theater, and I did a lot of pageants, and so anything on stage that I could do. And that was really my main interest when I was a kid, was performing. A normal day is waking up in the morning and taking care of my bookwork while the house is quiet. So I take care of all my bookwork from the day before, and then of course if I have artists to pay or bills to take care of, I do that in the morning, hopefully when the house is quiet, and answer any emails that have come in. And then I get into my studio. I try to get into either my studio or here by about 9 o'clock. And if I'm in my studio, then that means Beth, who works here with me, is in here. And if I'm here, then sometimes she's in my studio or sometimes she's off. And if I'm in my studio, I'm doing production work. So I'm either pressing tiles or airbrushing tiles, or I'm glazing the functional pottery. I generally make a good portion of the functional pottery in here on this wheel. But if I have a big project to do, like a whole set of dishes, I'll do them in my home studio where I have more space to spread out. Yeah. The steps that I like the best, which I would say, whether they're hard or easy, they're the easiest for me because they're the most enjoyable for me, are always the forming steps when the clay is wet. The wet clay is by far my favorite. And then once we get past that, it's sort of, the rest of the story to get it completed. For me, the part that I probably don't enjoy the most is airbrushing, but I like the way that the color looks when I airbrush. To put the color on the tiles on my wall, I use an airbrush, and I have to wear a respirator, so a mask with the respirators, because you don't want to breathe it. And I have to have an exhaust fan running over my head, the kind that they have in restaurant kitchens, so it's really loud, and I have to have the house or the studio wide open. So if it's hot outside, I'm having a hot day. If it's cold outside, I'm having a cold day. So it's my least favorite part. I wouldn't say it's hardest, but it's my least favorite. I don't know what the hardest part is.
I'm not done yet.
Because anything that's enjoyable, even if it's hard, it's well worth it. My parents don't help me in the store, but I would say that the reason that I work in an artistic way is because of my mom. My mom's a watercolor artist, so ever since we were kids, if Mom wanted to paint, then she had to give my brother and my sister and I some paper and some paintbrushes and let us paint. So ever since we were little, we've been painting, and she always encouraged, don't worry about mistakes. It's just paper, flip it over and paint on the other side. So I would say, even though my mom and my dad don't help me with my current work, they definitely help me to get where I am. Everybody has their preference. It's not necessarily that one's better than another. But I like the white clay body because I like translucent, bright glazes. And if I put that on an earth-toned clay body, the iron from the clay burns into my colors. So it'll muddy up a translucent color. They generally look kind of snotty on a brown clay body.
So unless you want that detail.
So now other people like more opaque glazes that will pick up that iron and make that glaze interesting, because opaque glazes are generally, not always, but generally not interesting on my clay body, because my clay body has nothing to offer it. So what I like is translucent glazes that I have a clean palette for. And I generally use texture or something, and the translucent glaze plays with that texture, and that's what it is offered to the glaze as opposed to, hey girl, how are ya? Okay, so my goal here is to center this clay. See how it's wobbly? It's making my hand move. I need to get it to where when I lay my hands on here, they don't move, okay? So it'll take me a few times. I'm going to do what's called wedging on the wheel. I'm going to go ahead and get it nice and sealed down to the wheel head.
It's a workout.
It is a workout, especially when you get up in like 7 pounds. You got a piece of, and you're just exhausted. You just have to take a break afterwards. All right, so I'm going to squeeze my hands together. Make my
So cool. Oh,
yeah, I'm not really making anything yet, but I'm preparing the clay to make, because when you do this, you get the clay all warmed up and you get all those particles moving, so they're more willing to work with you. The clay gets a little softer, and you make sure you don't have any air bubbles.
Watch out, Mary.
And you go ahead and try to get it in the center of the wheel.
It's so hard not to think about the potter and the clay. You know, when you're looking at creation and what God does to us like that. He smushes us around and builds us back up.
That's right.
That's when you use water to bring life back to it. A little bit, just a little with your finger. She's getting cracks in it.
Yeah.
Watch out.
You want to squeeze those particles together basically, so you give that bottom a little extra attention, because you're going to stretch the walls up several times, and every time you stretch those walls up, you're compressing that clay. So if you don't give that bottom a little extra attention, it'll crack in the kiln. Alright, so now let's just make this a bigger ball. Every now and then, I mean early on I didn't necessarily know, I just kind of let the clay take me somewhere, but the work definitely isn't as good if it's, for me, if it's not intentional, because, I can, with intentional, I can pay attention to every detail.